Hello there. Welcome to Blitz Transmissions. This is the Blitzcast number 53. I'm Tommy. Before we get into the content of this week's podcast episode, as always, you can check out the laundry list of links that can be found in the description below. If you're not subscribed to my YouTube channel, definitely consider doing that. I've got awesome Star Wars content coming out all the time. If you're an ARC Trooper in my Patreon, you would have seen this podcast episode early. If you'd like access to early content, monthly giveaways, and other awesome benefits, the link to my Patreon is in the description below. Become an ARC Trooper for just $4.99 a month. If you're a fan of the reviews I do on YouTube, or you just want to support my YouTube channel more directly, you can also check out my YouTube channel membership, Rancor Battalion. For just 99 cents a month, you get access to exclusive badges, priority replies in my comment section, and you get to check out the reviews early as opposed to all the content like you get with Patreon. And like the Patreon, you do get to vote on what I review next for the channel occasionally. If you'd like some Blitz Transmissions swag, you could head over to the Blitz Transmissions Armory over on Printify. That link can be found in the description below, as well as links to my Instagram, my Blitz Bounties Instagram, my X, my TikTok, and as always, you could always send me an email at blitztransmissions@gmail.com. So guys, welcome back to another episode of the Blitzcast. I feel like first and foremost, because it's been such a topic of the Blitzcast as of late, as of the last few episodes now, the LAT is backed. Hashtag LAT is backed. Woohoo! We did it! Very, very happy that we got this thing funded. It was honestly a pretty surreal moment, a big sigh of relief when I saw that this beast funded. I'm so excited that it's funded. I've been on 3 live streams since it funded. One on my own channel, which I just recorded a few days ago now, and then I also was on the last day of the campaign. I did our latest episode of the Sarlacc Digest Toy Chest, which you can find over on the Sarlacc Digest YouTube channel, and I was also on a stream on the SWTVC YouTube channel as well. Shout out to those guys for once again having me on their channels. Always appreciative of all of them, and very appreciative of the new friends that I've made because of the LAT campaign. You can hear all my thoughts, my debrief, all that stuff over on the hashtag LAT is backed live stream that I did with my good friends Wilbon and 212 Hunter. Appreciate those guys for kind of being my co-hosts throughout the entirety of all the streams and stuff that I did on Blitz Transmissions for the Republic gunship. So I'm very excited to be adding multiple TVC Republic gunships to the collection, and I don't think there's much to say on it. I feel like I've exhausted the topic completely on this channel, and I do think it's time to, as you know, with a big smile on my face, I've done my victory lat, and now it's time to move on. Let's see, what else have I done on the channel in the last week? You can find... Should probably get in the habit of looking this up. There is a new giveaway as of today, just recording this today. You guys will see it tomorrow in the future. As Squidward says, future! Shout out if you get SpongeBob references. Sometimes I feel like my audience is either just a little too old or just a little too young, and there aren't too many people that watched and remember SpongeBob the way that I watch and remember SpongeBob when I was a kid. I have some new videos that came out this last week. I did release an interview with Mark Newbold, who is a writer for Star Wars. He previously wrote for, Star Wars Insider Magazine, StarWars.com, Jedi News. He's also currently writing for IndustrialLightandMagic.com, ILM.com, and for Fantha Tracks. Apologies. Fantha Tracks as well. Awesome guy. He was great to talk to. I would always love interviewing new people, making new friends, learning about new facets of the Star Wars community, such as, in this case, the journalism side of the Star Wars community, and you know, a guy like Mark, who's been in it since the 90s. It's really cool to hear how things have changed and evolved over the decades, the development and, you know, social media in its infancy and the way that social media is now, how it's both an effective tool and an ineffective tool, so on and so forth. I also have released a review on the channel this week for Hasbro The Black Series Astromech Droid Holiday Edition. There is a corresponding Today's Toy short for that out on the YouTube channel as well. Definitely go check that out if you're interested. That is probably, I will say, one of my favorite holiday figures the Black Series has done to date. So definitely recommend picking it up if you can find somewhere to order it. I myself ordered it through Walmart's app as a pre-order, I want to say. But it came out shortly after it was announced. But, so I think that's all I have to say. If I didn't already mention, I did announce the newest giveaway for the Patreon that will be live streamed on YouTube on Wednesday. I believe it's a Wednesday, October 1st of this year. And the giveaway that was selected, voted on from a pool of items by the Patreon members, the ARC Troopers, was Hasbro the Black Series Return of the Jedi 40th carbonized Emperor's Royal Guard and TIE Fighter Pilot 2-pack. I actually used to own that set. I sold it this year at ICC-Con, but I actually really do like that set. I think if you're a big Imperial fan, particularly that Imperial Royal Guard is really, really nice. And honestly, he pops really nicely on the shelf. It's not too much. And I think with the way they did the soft goods on him, he's a lot more striking and vibrant than just your regular Emperor's Royal Guard. So definitely would recommend checking that figure out. I don't have a review for that set on the channel, but it is something that I recommend checking out maybe for yourself if that's, maybe you want it to pop a little more if you have some of those guys displayed with your Emperor figure. So you guys probably know, there's not a whole lot of Star Wars news going on. We're still in that weird, lull, a dry spell, if you will, of Star Wars news. And I think you guys already know, usually, if I have some sort of, fortune cookie title for a podcast episode, you already know things are going to get a little serious here on the Blitzcast. And, as much as I love to have fun on the Blitzcast, I think it's also important to, share with you my life experiences and, be a little bit more intimate with the whoever's watching or listening to this. Give you guys an opportunity to maybe give you some food for thought as you go into the weekend, as I release these on Saturday mornings here in the United States. So here is what I'm going to talk about. So the title here, this is a Clone Wars fortune cookie, and it's kind of funny. I'll get into this side tangent in a second here, but the fortune cookies mean so much more to me now as an adult, where when I was a kid, it was always, I always liked reading them at the beginning of the episode, but they've really impacted me more as I have grown and developed, both emotionally and intelligently, into my adult life. So the fortune cookie title for this week is Morality Separates Heroes from Villains. This comes from the Clone Wars episode, The Lawless. Again, I will repeat it. Morality separates heroes from villains. So I definitely wanted to talk about this subject. And honestly, it's kind of funny. I feel a lot like Mon Mothma in Andor when she is, going into the Senate chamber and she's about to denounce the Emperor. And I have that nervous feeling, but I also feel some very strong convictions for everything I'm about to say in this episode. Do keep in mind, everything that I say in this podcast episode is my opinion and my opinion only. It is, while some things may be some words of advice, with what I've found works for my life, that might not be the same for everybody. Also realize that, my morals almost entirely come from my beliefs as a Catholic and as a Christian. So if that's, something you can't get down with, just remember, I like to think I'm a very, very open-minded person. I don't like to talk about real-world events or, politics or anything like that here on Blitz Transmissions. This is a Star Wars channel, so I like for it to almost exclusively remain about Star Wars. But I feel like there are a lot of ways that Star Wars influenced my childhood, and in the same ways that my religion and my faith have shaped me as a person. I think that Star Wars has done a really good job of reinforcing a lot of those core values, and giving me more of a secular view on how to treat others, and what's right and what's wrong. So, the fortune cookies, again, I loved them when I was watching them as a kid in the Clone Wars, and I've honestly found it interesting how many times I've referenced them in Star Wars podcast, in this podcast, because they're such a minor part of the Clone Wars. Yes, they're at the beginning of every single episode, from the beginning of the season to the end of the season, or beginning of the show to the end of the show, but I feel like when I was a kid, like there's some you remember more than others, and kind of when you're just going through the list of them, you tend to remember them a little differently, and based on your situation in life, and what you're going through, what you're dealing with, they can hit you a little harder than others, and very much in the same way I feel like it's the in my religious view, the Bible does the same things. Like it'll depend on the day how much a specific reading or verse or book or parable affects me from day to day. There's a lot of, but maybe you can't relate to it as much, based on your current situation in life. There has been a lot going on in the world as of late, and I think that it's something that has always been present. However, I think that the media has just caught on to a lot of things within a small span of time. A lot of media-worthy stories have shown up within a short span, and I think it has a lot of people worried, concerned, upset, angry, you name it. Hopefully not happy, which I will get into. But a lot has been going on in the United States and across the world. I know that there's a lot going on in Nepal right now with their government. Very, very corrupt government, to my understanding, and they're dealing with a lot. There's stuff going on here in the United States. We've had a lot of issues with our schools not being safe. I'm trying to think of the best way to phrase this so that this doesn't get flagged on YouTube or anything like that, because I don't want this to get censored or taken down. But I'm sure that if you have half a brain, you'll know what I'm talking about. Concerns about safety of children in schools here in the United States, concerns about whether or not you are truly able to safely exercise your First Amendment right, which is something that we as Americans hold very close. And if you know what I do for work, then you'll know that that is something that's very important to me as well, is all of the rights of the people of this country, and things that I hold very seriously. Lots going on and lots of talk about that. And I've had lots of conversation in the last few days with my close circle of friends, about both, and pretty much mostly in the Star Wars space, but also friends outside the Star Wars space as well. And I feel like this is a great opportunity for me to have some conversation about Star Wars, and link the two together. Relevant Star Wars topics that came up because of real time events that are still unfolding right now. I think that one of the greatest things that Star Wars has done for me is reinforced what it means to be a moral and good person. And I have seen, if you know what I do for work, you know that I see reprehensible things all the time, every day. And that's kind of what I'm getting at. The stuff that's on the news this week is happening all the time, every day, all over the world. This week is not special in that way. It's just that these things happen to all make the news in a very short span of time. And that is such a dreadful thing to have to say, that this is unfortunately not as uncommon as it's being made out to be on TV and on the internet right now. These kinds of things that I mentioned happen all over the world all the time, every day. And that is abhorrent, reprehensible. I could come up with a million vocab words to call it. It's bad. That, from my view, seeing things like this all the time, and obviously I'm a bit jaded to it because I see it so often. And there comes a point where it just becomes like you're normal when you see things like this so often. Horrible, awful acts that people do to one another. In all kinds of dynamics, relationship dynamics, power dynamics, government dynamics, all kinds of things. There are some awesome moments in Star Wars that have really reinforced my worldview and my view on what it means to be a moral and good person as I've grown up. And I'm very proud of how how I've clung to those morals in the way that I have. I think that the biggest one is holding on to the Jedi Order. The Jedi are the good guys. The values that they hold dear are the good values. And I think that we sometimes get caught up in the nuance of that, because a lot of the times, especially for prequel kids, the Jedi that we see are the corrupt, Jedi Order full of hubris and full of corruption in the prequel trilogy. However, that's not what each individual Jedi is. There are plenty of Jedi throughout Star Wars that exemplify what it means to be a moral and a good person. Some great examples are Luke Skywalker, who would not give up on his father no matter what. His father was one of the most awful beings. I shouldn't say awful beings. His father had committed some of the biggest atrocities in the history of the Star Wars universe ever. And Luke Skywalker would not give up on his father. And him not giving up on his father is what saved his father. In the end, even Darth Vader believed that Darth Vader was too far gone. Too far from coming back. And it took love and compassion for Darth Vader to become Anakin Skywalker once more and truly defeat the ultimate evil. Sacrificing himself in doing so, but defeating the ultimate evil. Some other Jedi that do similar things are Kanan Jarrus. Was Kanan Jarrus a perfect person? No. Kanan Jarrus did all kinds of things that broke the traditional Jedi code. However, Kanan Jarrus put his best foot forward every day, learned things about himself, chose to be vulnerable, chose to open his mind to new perspectives. And through doing that, he was able to, again, make the ultimate sacrifice, but save those who he loved. And Darth Vader does the same thing. It's kind of interesting how in Star Wars, Anakin's big story is all he wants to do is save the one he loves, Padme. And through selfish acts, Anakin is unable to save Padme's life. And she ends up dying. Regardless, he does all these horrible things thinking that it will save Padme's life. And she ends up dying in the end anyway. He becomes Darth Vader. He falls to the dark side. All it takes is for someone like Luke, his son, to show him compassion. Someone who he does have love for, to show him compassion, even after he's fallen to the dark side. At this point, when Return of the Jedi happens, Darth Vader has been Darth Vader for decades. And he still comes back, but the difference this time is Darth Vader makes the selfless act to save the one he loves instead of the selfish act. And that is what makes all the difference between Anakin Skywalker in Revenge of the Sith and Anakin Skywalker in Return of the Jedi. And that is a great comparison to make there. Similarly, in the Christian faith, in the Bible, we are taught that selfless acts are way more constructive than acts of self-preservation. And we are taught to give and to give and to listen to one another and to love one another, and that love will beat all in the end, ultimately. And I think that Star Wars does a great job from a very different point of view, from a secular view, of expressing that same base message that selfish acts will get you nothing. In the short term, you will think that it's helping you, but in the long term, you have to act through selflessness to better the lives of others if that's what you are called to do. And I hope that as I talk here, I'm explaining this well, because I do have bullet points off to the side here of things I want to make sure I hit on, but I hope that I'm saying things correctly. I don't want to misconstrue anything or mislead anybody in this episode. And honestly, I invite if you're watching or listening on YouTube or Spotify, you have the opportunity to comment and you disagree with me, please let me know. I would love to have some sort of discourse or conversation, or you could join my Discord, and we could talk more directly in more of a group setting as well. I think particularly Kanan Jarrus really jumps out to me as well, because he exposes himself to a whole different lifestyle than that of the traditional Jedi, and it really changes him for the better. And he learns a lot through other people who have different upbringings than him. A person like Ezra Bridger, for example, who is different from Kanan in almost every way. They learn from each other. It's not just one way Ezra learns from Kanan. They learn from each other. They bounce off each other. They both become better Jedi because of one another. And that's the beauty of the Master and Padawan relationship as well. The teacher and the pupil is you both learn from each other. It's not just the master teaching the apprentice. It's a two-way street. It's a very symbiotic relationship. Now I kind of want to jump into this morality argument again this morality statement. This morality separates heroes from villains. Again, the difference between what Anakin does in Revenge of the Sith and what he does in Return of the Jedi, as I just said, comes from the difference of selfish acts versus selfless acts. Anakin Skywalker sacrifices his morality and his ethics and his code of honor for selfishness, and the whole galaxy burns down because of it, and a fascist empire rises in a republic's place overnight because of selfishness, and it's because Anakin sacrificed his morals and his ethics. I think that when we sacrifice our own morals and ethics, I think this is where we can really learn from Anakin Skywalker. When we sacrifice our morals and our ethics to get what we want or to feel good, that is where, and again, I'm saying this from both a religious sense and a secular sense, we become worse and we hurt others more through short-term gain. And I think I've always been this way on this channel. I've had several podcast episodes. I've had an anti-bullying episode. I've had an episode about, sticking to your truths and sticking to what you believe. But in this episode, I think that the focus needs to be, I think that this message needs to be heard to my very small audience and my small corner of the internet in the Star Wars fandom, that morality and sympathy and empathy are far more important than selfish, hateful feelings. I think we have to understand this is something that I've been talking about with my good friend Skywalker Hendrix. Go subscribe to Skywalker Hendrix on YouTube, please. Awesome Hot Toys content, awesome content about movies and stuff. I know he recently did a Superman review. The new Superman movie. We've had, and honestly, I feel like the Superman movie has really, not to jump off Star Wars, but I feel like the Superman movie came out at a great time this year, because I feel like it really has helped me reinforce a lot of my own, things that I hold deeply true, my own morals. And I loved every minute of that movie. But Hendrix and I have been talking and a lot recently, and about a lot of things, and we have been throwing around the phrase, hurt people hurt people, and I think that we see that a lot nowadays, especially, is that people who have a lot going on the inside, they lash out and they'll do things to other people that maybe we don't quite understand in the moment, But there's an underlying motive there. Everybody does things for a reason. Nobody just does things willy-nilly. Everybody has a reason for everything they say, everything they do. If someone is choosing to be a hateful person, if someone is choosing to dance on somebody's grave, or be completely apathetic toward a situation or another person, that's coming from a place of hurt within themselves. Anakin was dealing with so much in Revenge of the Sith. He was dealing with so much inner turmoil, and how can you expect Anakin, given his situation, given his past, given his life story, to just make the right decision, because that's the right thing to do? That's something that a person of strong moral character does, but unless you're like the ultimate good and you've never had any struggle in your life, that's a very easy thing to say. Oh, well, he should have just done this. He should have just not given in to his anger and his hate and his loss. But you have to look at what Anakin's life was and his situation was. And Anakin was a very hurt person, a man who had lost his mother, a man who feared losing his wife the same way that he lost his mother. Keep in mind, Padme was really the only person in his entire life to show him the kind of love and affection that his mother did, and that is something that I think was very important to Anakin, and it clouded his vision. And I know there are plenty of essays and plenty of hundreds and probably thousands of written and video and audio essays about Anakin's story in Revenge of the Sith, and we all know. But I think it really rings true right now that Anakin did the things he did because he thought what he was doing would save someone that he loved, because he loved them selfishly, not selflessly. And Anakin was a very hurt person, and he made some really bad decisions because of his hurt and his fear and all that stuff. So I think you have to really know that people may say and do very confusing things to us, but it comes from a place of inner pain. And I think it's up to us to not stoop to the level of people that we are, opposed to, people that maybe we even consider the enemy in some cases. I think Andor did a great job of really explaining, very modern takes on these kinds of messages too. I look at the Gorman massacre and how you had the Imperial propaganda that was peddling a narrative as soon as the massacre had ended. People had just lost their lives, and automatically you had people getting behind a microphone and peddling a narrative. We're taking away from a horrible thing that just happened, and we're trying to spin it and twist it into something else. I've seen that a lot this week, and I see it happen all the time on social media. And again, I'm not going to share my personal opinions on any of it. I'm not going to go into my politics, because that's not relevant to what I'm talking about right now. What's relevant is the question of morality, and that is why I named this podcast what I named it. Because at what point do we have a line that we don't cross? I may have brought this up on a recent podcast episode. When you are a moral person, there are lines that you will not cross. When you are a person of strong moral character, there are lines you won't cross. And whether that comes from your religious beliefs or just things that you hold to be true very deeply through your ethics or your moral code, there are certain lines you will not cross. And you have to understand that there are people that will happily cross those lines to test your grit, to test your will, to test you. And it's up to us to not stoop to the level of the people that we dislike, not give in to feeling the knee-jerk reaction, anger, sadness, fear, the path to the dark side. That is really, it's really striking to me just how much the Jedi Order relates to, beliefs that I've had my whole life, how much it's reinforced my faith-based beliefs, and just how much, and as I've been talking over the last month or so, I mean, you guys know, a lot has happened in my personal life. I've been struggling with a lot, with loss and grief and trying to come to terms with with abrupt ending of friendships and an abrupt ending of lives in my family, people I've known forever and loved very deeply. And there are certain ways that you can choose to react, because that's we know all the time. You can choose, you can't control things that happen to you, but you can always control how you react to those situations. And that can take a lot of discipline. It can take a lot of thought and a lot of mental training. But I think that's a very important tool to have in your tool belt. I exercise discipline every day of my life. If you guys know me, you definitely know that's true. It's very easy to act out of anger. And in the short term, kind of like I was talking before, acting out of anger and fear and, hate can feel good in the short term and make you feel vindicated and make you feel like you got them. You showed that person, whether it's something as simple as, mentioning something about somebody on a live stream and pretending that you're not talking about that person in particular, and then you puff your chest and you feel so good when you made fun of that person. Or something as large as, again, like dancing on somebody's grave. It might feel good in the short term, but you are poisoning your soul when you do things like that. So I think that it's very important that this message get put out there, at least in my audience right now. I hope that this maybe gives you some food for thought as you go into your work week, as you go into life this week. Especially, start with the minor inconveniences of life. Someone cut you off at the red light, or, you're at the four-way stop in the car and it wasn't that person's turn, but they went anyway. There's a reason that person went. And I think rather than getting mad at them, I think it's more important to kind of understand honestly, the way I do it is I pray for people. If I see that, a hurt person does something very hurtful, I pray for you. If you do something very hateful, I pray for that person. I don't want that person, I don't want that happen. Just as much as I pray for the people, the victims, I'm going to pray for the person that did that act of wrong, because if I hold that same hate in my heart for that person, how am I any better than that person if I'm holding that same level of hate? And that's why the Jedi Order teaches lack of attachment, while we find out later that wasn't the way they practiced it, was definitely not the correct way to go about it. Especially, the prequel Jedi, the way that they practiced no attachment was not the correct way to go about that teaching. It is very important to know that there's a reason for it. I mean, if we have such strong feelings towards things, we're so much more likely to act out in anger, in fear, in pain and suffering. It's such a difficult road to cross, because again, your flesh, your mind, your knee-jerk reaction is to retaliate, to get back at this person, to show them who's boss and show them, and prove something. No, you be the better person, and by being the bigger person, you will prove more than you ever could by retaliating, going tit for tat, stooping to the other person's level. That is, I think, the biggest message I want to get across this week. And that is what separates a hero from a villain. And that is how we sum up the title of this podcast episode. You can be through morality, through believing in what's right and what's just, you can overcome, and you can rebuild, and you can build back better. There's so much you can do that through being the bigger person in any given situation. I think that is an important lesson that I really want my audience to take home this week. Because for me, I've been on both sides of the fence. I still do it. I'm not perfect. I'm just a guy, just like everybody else. I have plenty of situations in my life where I'll say something snarky because that's how I'm gonna, I'll show that person, But at the end of the day, I'm putting so much value on something that I'm gonna wake up tomorrow and my life still goes on. So how can I fight for a solution rather than fight reactively? I guess that's a good way to talk about it too. How do we act proactively instead of reactively? That's a good question to ask maybe yourself throughout the week. It's a question I've been asking myself. How do I work to act proactively and not reactively? I think honestly, I know I said I wouldn't talk about it, but the whole HasLab campaign with the Republic gunship is a great way, a great example of this. I mean, you had so many people just complaining and throwing their complaints into every comment section that they could find about this HasLab and how much they didn't like it, what they didn't like. There's a difference between reacting and then being proactive and saying, okay, well, I'm going to maybe offer some constructive criticism and give ways that this can be improved going forward. And, that's about as involved as you can get on the consumer level in this particular example, but look at it in real life too. If there's something that's making you upset, if there's something that happened that's making you upset, how can I turn this into something constructive rather than trying to destroy the thing that caused this frustration for me? And that's how you overcome it. That's how you move forward. That's how you grow. Again, if you know me in my day-to-day life, I take so much from so many people every single day. And it all is about how you react to it. Very, very, very easily, I could choose to go tit for tat with every person that I meet. I could choose to go tit for tat and, hate on people the way I get hated on all the time, whether it's in the Star Wars space or at work or in, personal life, whatever. But that's not going to do any good. It's really not. It's not. So, I think that it's important to look at through the Jedi. Really, really, I think that as an adult, I think the Jedi are a perfect example of what's good and what's wrong. What's good and what's wrong. What's good and what's bad. What's right and what's wrong. As Princess Bunhead says in the Thumb Wars, the Phantom Cuticle, which you can look up and watch on YouTube. Good, bad, bad, good. Good, good, bad, good, bad, good, bad, good, bad, good. Bad is bad. Good is good. I by the way, that is a total acid trip if you want to watch that. Definitely, it's such a fun watch. Anyway, love Thumb Wars. But I think that there are plenty of examples in the Clone Wars about particularly the Jedi and the people that they influence making the selfless decision, making the moral decision and having their lives touched by the Jedi, by people who believe in what's morally right. Honestly, as much as we as a Star Wars community love to take a dump on the Martez sisters arc of the Clone Wars in season 7, which is for me as well at like the bottom of the barrel when it comes to Clone Wars story arcs. I do not enjoy watching that. I do not go out of my way to watch it at all. I think, though, there is a great lesson to be learned from that arc. And Trace and Rafa Martez have a huge animosity toward the Jedi Order. Why do they hold such negative feelings toward the Jedi? They tell a story about a time where the Jedi were chasing a criminal, and the criminal ended up, crashing, and their parents died because of this crash. And the Jedi told them, all the Jedi had to say was, "May the Force be with you." And they heavily allude to that the Jedi was Luminara Unduli. And then the Jedi leave. And they're left with this mess. They're left with these feelings. And they blame the Jedi because they're hurt. They take those negative feelings and project them outward to other people. And it takes someone like Ahsoka, who has been through so much hurt and has every opportunity to stoop to that same level and be angry at the Jedi Order and hold that animosity and hold that hate and that judgment for the Jedi Order, which she called family. I just did my episode on Ahsoka very recently, and it really coincides with this. The Jedi Order was everything to Ahsoka. They were her family. They betrayed her. She has every right in our flesh and blood, in our vindicated minds. She has every right to be angry at them and hold hatred toward the Jedi Order. She chooses not to. She chooses to grow, move past it, and she ends up becoming more of a Jedi than anyone could ever hope to be, because she grows and she moves past it. And then she touches the lives of others, and that same lesson gets passed on to Trace and Rafa, and they end up letting go of that animosity that they've had for the Jedi Order. And that is, I think, how we should lead our lives. Not to, reiterate things I talked about a few episodes ago, but Ahsoka. I think that through Ahsoka, we can learn so much about ourselves, and I think she's a beautifully written character, and I think Dave Filoni has done such a fantastic job of building Ahsoka's character. Someone that's relatable, someone that we can look up to, someone that we can also, laugh at in her younger years. Like, oh, it reminds me of my little sister. Things like that. There were plenty of other moments in the Jedi's lives, where a lot of times Jedi make a choice. They choose not to stoop to the level of the Sith, because again, how am I any better? How am I any better than the Sith? That is, again, morality is what separates heroes from villains. Villains will do whatever it takes to get what they want, and they will break every boundary. They will live by no code, except I'm going to get what I want, by whatever means necessary. And the Jedi have limits. The Jedi realize the Jedi are extremely powerful. The Jedi could totally just take over the galaxy if they wanted to. The Jedi could just dominate the entire Star Wars galaxy if they wanted to in a day. And they choose not to. The late and great Stan Lee has a great quote about that, with a particular very, very iconic character. With great power comes great responsibility. I think that my message to you guys this week is as along with every other message I've given in this podcast, is this. I will not tolerate or associate with lack of morals and lack of ethics. I won't do it. If you do not believe in morals, if you just believe that there's no consequences for anything, then you're not for me. This channel is not for you. If you believe that you can get whatever you want by any means necessary, if you lack empathy, if you lack sympathy, if you're so okay and willing, and you have so much hate in your heart to just stoop down to the level of those you hate and dance on people's graves, I've said it a few times now, but I'll say it again. Then I pray for you. I pity you. Personally, that's how I handle my situations. But this channel's not for you if that's the case. It's as simple as that. It's pretty cut and dry. If you're not willing to open your mind to moving past things and understanding that conflict only happens because two opposing sides allow it to happen, then there's always an opportunity to stop. I've actually exercised that in my life in the last week or so. I've opened the door and reached out the olive branch to people that I haven't spoken to in a very long time, people that I considered best friends for life, and we had horrible, awful falling outs. And I chose to keep things going by making comments and making jokes and holding that hate in my heart. I feel so free now that I've let it go, extended the olive branch, and accepted that even if thankfully in my case, both of those situations have ended very positively, and I feel like I have an opportunity to rebuild those friendships, but that's not always going to be the case, and I was prepared in my heart of hearts for that not to be the case, because I still felt free by exercising that feeling of compassion. And that's what the Jedi's biggest strength is, compassion. Have compassion for others. Doesn't matter if you like them or not. Doesn't matter if you agree with them or not. Have compassion. Because if we as a society lose that, if we lose compassion for one another, regardless of whether or not we like one another, if we lose that, then we will fall. as a society. And that is, again, that's what happened to the Republic in the prequel trilogy. We will fail as a society if we lack empathy, ethics, morals, compassion. We fail, because then we're only looking out for ourselves and we're not looking out for each other. That's tribalistic. We don't work like that. You know, I'm speaking from the perspective of an American, obviously. I know it's different all across the world, but I think it rings true pretty much everywhere. We lack compassion for others, then that's when things can get really ugly. So I think I've talked long enough. I think I've exhausted everything I wanted to say this week. Again, I think it was a great week to not have a whole lot of Star Wars news, because I think I got to really get a lot off my chest this week. A lot of things I've been having some very strong convictions about. If you agree, if you disagree, I'd love to hear from you one way or the other. I'd love to have a conversation, because that's another thing. If we stop talking and having conversations about our differences, that's another way that we fail. We fail ourselves and we fail each other by lacking level of understanding with one another. But I think that's it. I think that's all. I'm trying to rack my brain and make sure I get everything off my chest, because this is the only time I'm going to be covering this subject. This is it. But again, morality separates heroes from villains. Everyone should want to be a hero. You shouldn't want to be a villain. I know villains look cool in a lot of media. Like I'm going to be honest. I think Darth Vader looks a lot cooler than Luke Skywalker looks, but I aspire to be like Luke Skywalker. I aspire to let go of my hate like Anakin Skywalker, not like Darth Vader, like Anakin Skywalker. And I think that's representative, honestly, of the dark side in itself. It looks really cool. It looks badass. Like Darth Vader, Darth Maul, Darth Malgus, those guys look awesome. But with that comes a lot of nastiness on the inside. So, yeah. That's all I have to say this week, guys. I think that if you are religious, I think definitely say a prayer for the world right now. I think it really needs it. There's a lot of healing that needs to happen. I think that through compassion we can get there, and I think that together as a community we can really, that's what Star Wars is supposed to be about. Star Wars is not supposed to be divisive. Star Wars is supposed to be about teaching compassion and sympathy and those kinds of values. So that's all I have for you guys. Let me know if this was a good episode, or if you think I'm fried. If you agree with me or disagree with me, let's talk in the comments. Let's talk in my Discord. You can always shoot me an email if you want to have a more private conversation, or DM me on any of my social media. Guys, I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Blitzcast. I'll catch you for the next one, and may the Force be with you.
Breaking off. All units, fire at will. 1-2, pick a target. Too many, Captain. Watch your stabilizer, Gold 6. Anybody, cover me. I got 2 vultures on my tail. You've got to hold them here. Watch your left. I can't shake them. I'm hit. Where's our reinforcements?